What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are here to discuss another draft prospect. And today, we're taking a look at a receiver that has been mocked to the Detroit Lions many times already. I know it's only January, but he's already been mocked to the Lions a ton. Maybe you've seen him mocked to the Lions somewhere. Maybe you mocked him to the Lions. Maybe you were going through it. Maybe you drafted this guy. Or maybe you looked at PFF and you're like, oh, who are people drafting for the Lions? Oh, this guy. So that's what we're going to take a look at today. We're going to take a look at receiver Treylon Burks from the Arkansas Razorbacks. And as y'all know, okay, if I mess up someone's name when we go through these film videos, I apologize, but I don't really listen to it. I just kind of watch. So today we're talking about Treylon Burks. Let's get it started.
The city's been down and it found a way to get up. And when you knock us down, we're going to get up. And on the way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off, all right? And we're going to stand up. And then it's going to take 2 more shots to knock us down. We're going to take another hunk out of you. Before long, we're going to be the last one standing.
Welcome everybody to the video. Glad you guys are here to be back with another draft profile video, man. These videos are gonna be flying out as we go through this all season, and once we get closer to the draft, we are still waiting on some film. So certain positions are kind of hard to do draft videos on, like safety. You know, certain safeties we got some film on, and I've been diving into that. But other ones is kind of like, okay, if I can't see the all 22, I don't really know what the safety's doing. Same thing with cornerback. So there's certain positions that are kind of tough. But I think this one worked out pretty well. We're talking about the receiver Treylon Burks. Now, I did get a new camera, so we will be using that soon. We're not using it right now. I'm still trying to figure it out. The settings and stuff, they kind of confuse me. I'm trying to figure it out, but it will be in use soon. I'm sure you'll be able to tell the difference when we start using that. Also, if you could, all right? If you could, there's that link in the description to vote my man Michael Banks, the Ford Hall of Fans nominee. It's like FordHallOfFans.com. The link in the description. You can click that and just vote for that guy. You know, you can vote daily. It's free. Just vote. Let's get this man to the Hall of Fame. Let's get a Lions guy in there. All right. So if you guys could just do that. Hey, it's real simple. All you got to do is click the link. You click on the guy and bam, you vote. That's it. That's all you got to do. And it's, like I said, it's free. Also, if you want to click the like button, you can do it. I know I don't really usually ask for likes, but I've been seeing a lot of people do it. So I'm like, all right, you know what? I'm just going to put it out there, you know, just to remind you, because, hey, you don't got to. I get it. If you don't want to, you don't have to. I'm just glad you're here. How you doing? How's everybody doing today? So that's what's going down today. I don't know how we got off topic so much. I don't even remember what's going on. Anyway, we're talking about Treylon Burks. That's where we're at. So another receiver today. And yes, this guy has been mocked to the Lions a ton. Our chats have been blowing up with this guy. Like, we're going through a mock draft in the chat saying Treylon Burks. I think it's time to talk about him. So that's what we're going to do today, and the film will continue to come. Also, you can check out xosdigitalsports.com, where I'm going to continue to update that with player descriptions and Patreon. The Patreon link is in the description. We're going to be doing exclusive draft content over there as we go through this offseason. Plus, you could also become a member to the YouTube channel by becoming an All-Pro member, and you'll get that same exclusive content access. But anyways, with all that away, now let's move into this draft profile video. So who's Treylon Burks? Well, he's a receiver for the Arkansas Razorbacks, and he had a pretty good season, all right? And now he's being mocked in the first round, late first round, second round, kind of in that range. This past season, he had 66 receptions for over 1,100 yards. This was in 12 games played. 11 receiving touchdowns. He's also got some size to him, 6'3", 225 pounds, and you guys know me, okay? Hey, especially with this quarterback, Jared Goff, I do like my receivers with a little bit of size. You know, Drake London, extremely popular. I'm a big Drake London fan. By the way, if there's a film video of Drake London, it's on the Patreon. But big Drake London fan, but he's got some size as well. So Treylon Burks got some size, he's got some speed, but he's a receiver that's been mocked to us a ton, playing in the SEC, and he had a really nice season this past year. So we're going to dive into it. We're going to break it down into a few different categories. We're going to break it down into versatility. We're going to break it down into release, route running, catching, running after the catch, and a couple of extras as well. So let's waste no time. Let's dive right into this. Let's discuss Treylon Burks, pros and cons of Treylon Burks, and who he reminds me of. Because the guy that he reminds me of, you may call me crazy, but I do see flashes of this guy. I really do, especially coming out of the draft. And let's just say he's having a little bit of success in the NFL. Just a little bit. What's his versatility? What's his role within your offense? What has his role been with Arkansas? Well, he's mainly been a slot receiver. I know, 6'3", 225, usually expecting to be a Z or an X outside receiver. No, he's basically a slot receiver for Arkansas this past year. Majority of his snaps at the slot receiver position. He also has played a little bit on the outside. Specifically, when he goes to the outside, they usually line him up as the X receiver, meaning he's on the line of scrimmage. A lot of times they try to get one-on-one opportunities opportunities with him there to take a shot down the field. I think he's lined up at Z a few times, not a ton, but he's mainly played the slot position. But there's a ton of versatility within his game. All right, like a Drake London, like a Amon-Ra St. Brown, he's one of those guys that you can pretty much line up everywhere. And like the guy that I'm comparing him to, you may already know who I'm going to compare him to, but we'll get there. He's a guy that you can line up in the backfield. You can line him up as a running back. You can line him up as a tight end. You can use him in motions. Of course, if he's a slot or if he's a Z receiver, he can motion around. So you can pretty much put him anywhere. He's so versatile that there was a play that I saw. I think he may have actually tried this twice from the film that I saw, where he was going to throw the football. All right, so there's a ton of versatility within this guy's game, but mainly he's been playing that slot position, attacking the zone holes of a defense, moving around pre-snap, motions, getting the ball in his hands behind the line of scrimmage, past the line of scrimmage. So just a ton of different ways, tons of versatility within his game, and that's what he did with Arkansas. Now, let's move on to playing the receiver position. Let's start with the release. Now, with his release, it's a little bit different because he's mainly playing the slot position. It means he doesn't really get press coverage from the slot position because he's playing the slot. He's off the line of scrimmage a little bit. So it's a little bit different with the release here. It does keep him free off the release, which helps him a ton. But there's a couple of things that do stick out with his release. First thing is he's a pretty physical receiver. He's got the build to do it, and he plays a lot with his strength, especially off of the release. If they put him out as the X receiver, usually leans on his physicality to get separation off the release. So this is an area that I definitely think that he could use some work, use some improvement here, all right, when it comes to footwork to get some space off the release. But right now he's been leaning a little bit more to the strength side, and he's had some success with that. Now, some cornerbacks, if they can handle him physically, they can be pretty sticky off the release, especially when he's lined up on the outside. But putting him in a slot, you usually don't see that kind of matchup for him because he's on the slot, because he's not up against the line of scrimmage. Press is one spot where I do think he could use a little work. Now, he's actually been extremely productive statistically against the press, but I think that's because he's just making plays down the field. I think that's a spot area that he could use a little work.
Now, this is one of the releases that I like here. So you're going to get an in, out, in release from Burks. Now, you're not going to get a jam on this play, but you're going to see he sets this up to get space to the inside where the defender is not trying to let him go because he doesn't have help due to where the linebackers are, and you're going to get a cover 2 drop, so the safeties are going to give some room here. So you're going to see the in, the first step there, bam, to set him up, then back out, and it's going to open up the hips, give him some space to the inside to sit down on this route. You can see the space that he's able to create. Another in-out, in-release here, and man, the deep speed, the long speed does threaten these cornerbacks. He's going to have that space towards the inside, so he's going to start with the in to set up his defender, read where he wants to go, then the out, which is going to give him the open hips for the defender and allow him to attack inside. The long speed, now he's trailing, and then stop on a dime. Notice how he's doing this from both sides of the field, which I like, and then again, put it on the brakes, slam on the brakes. Ball doesn't go there this time, but it's a good route.
Now, I do think he has some deceptive, I'll call it deceptive, acceleration. All right, this is one of those guys, it's more of a strider to me. He's got some nice long speed, we'll get to that, but he's got some deceptive acceleration, specifically when he is clean. All right, now if you can bump him and handle his physicality off the line of scrimmage when he's lined up as an X, in that spot, he doesn't look as explosive off the release. However, if he can get off the release clean from the slot, from the Z, because of course there's that little bit of space there getting between you and a cornerback. If he's free, basically my point is he's got some deceptive acceleration. You really see it when he's in open field, when the ball's in his hands. You see a little bit more acceleration than maybe you would expect out of a guy like that. That was my water bottle popping. You know how they do. Here, I can give you another one. Okay, stop. Y'all know how they do. But that's kind of my takeaways from his release. So I think he could use some work if you're talking about using him as an X receiver on the outside. But he does have, I think, a lot of the physical tools. The acceleration isn't bad. I think they would just have to work more on his footwork to make sure that he's able to get space off of there consistently. But he definitely has the strength to usually give guys problems. And there's not a ton of cornerbacks that can handle that, especially back at the college level. That moves us on to the next part of his game, which is route running. Now, route running is, again, a little bit interesting. All right, there's good, there's bad here. Because he played so much at the slot, one thing that you obviously take away right away is his ability to find the holes in his zone. Slowing down on routes, finding holes in the zone, making yourself a target for a quarterback. And that's something that he was tasked with a ton against zone coverage. Get in the slot, find a hole, make yourself a big target. So as a route runner, that's one thing that he's really good at. He's pretty fearless attacking the middle of the field. They use him a lot there, but finding the holes in the zone. And one thing that I have to throw in there, because it's not exactly in terms of like watching a guy run a route, I think he makes himself a fantastic target for quarterbacks. He'd be one of the quarterback's favorite targets because he makes himself a very big option for a quarterback, not just because of his size, obviously that helps, but he also tries to get the attention of a quarterback. He finds holes in zone well, and then at the same time, when he finds those holes, or he finds some space, or he knows based on the coverage that he's going to have some space, you'll see him put his hands up. You know, he'll give him a nice little wave. He'll put his hands up. He'll get his eyes to the quarterback so the quarterback can see him. Sometimes I think he actually gets his eyes to the quarterback a little bit too early. You know, sometimes he'll do it too early on a go route, and then he's watching the quarterback and he's slowing himself down. But he definitely makes himself a very big target for quarterbacks because he makes himself an option. You know, he's a bailout option. When a play breaks down, he'll find a space, put his arms up. He's a big, wide target, but he makes himself an option, makes himself available for a quarterback, and he is pretty darn good off schedule making plays. Making plays off schedule, and again, because he's so big that he can have some problems. We'll get to that more in a second, but I definitely like that aspect of his route running. Now, one thing I don't like is that he's not extremely crisp with his route running. You know, that's one thing for sure, especially when you're playing the outside, that definitely shows up. He's not an extremely crisp route runner. He does have a tendency to round off routes. And to tie along with that is that his route tree is pretty, I would call it, his route tree is pretty darn tiny. All right. It's like if you had a playbook, it'd be like maybe 3 plays. All right, here's your 3, like maybe not even 3. It's a very limited route tree that we saw in college. And that's not on him. Some of that could be the play calling, but it's a pretty limited route tree as an outside receiver, specifically as a X receiver. Putting him one-on-one, putting him on the line of scrimmage, which a lot of times can be tasked with beating press, beating man. A lot of times you're going to get those situations. He's good at running the go ball, you know, going vertical, making a play on the football. But that's really one of the only routes that he'll run as his X receiver. There's not much depth there within a route tree when lined up as an outside receiver. For sure, an area when it comes to route running that you would like to see improved for your team, because he has the build, the size, some of the speed to be an X receiver, but he doesn't really have the depth within the route running. And that may be part of the reason that they played him so much as a slot receiver. Also, one little note that I did like is early in the stem of a route, he does have a nice little shake that can give him some space. And I think you really see that when he's playing in the slot, because he'll shake linebackers early, really early, like right past his release. He has a nice little shake in his routes that can get him a little bit of space, get him some leverage based on where he knows the route is going to go. And he's really good with that leverage, setting himself up, boxing out defenders, and whether that's on a deep route, underneath route, middle of the field, he has that nice little shake to his route. So definitely not extremely crisp, and it's very limited of what we've seen on the outside, but there is definitely things to like within his route running. So again, I like a lot of things here. That moves me down to the next category, which is pass catching. We kind of touched on this a little bit, but there's a lot to like as a pass catcher, a ton. There's a couple of little like cons and, you know, maybe petty little knocks I have against him, but there is really a lot to like as a catcher, as a pass catcher. First thing that I like is that he's got a huge catch radius. Huge. It's a ginormous catch radius. And I wouldn't even say he's like the greatest athlete. He's got this huge vertical. I don't know what it's going to be. We'll see when the combine happens. But for him, he has a really big catch radius. And I think what makes it so big is that he does such a good job of tracking the football. Excellent. He's excellent at tracking the ball in the air. Excellent. Like when I say that this guy makes himself a big target for quarterbacks, he is so good at tracking the ball in the air. And this is a 50-50 ball. This is a back shoulder pass. This is a ball on a broken down play where the ball's just thrown up and he's got to create some space. His ball tracking is, to me, phenomenal. I think that's one of his best traits. All right, and that makes his catch radius look even bigger, but it's already big. He's long. He's got long speed, which sticks out for sure, is that he does have that ability to take the top off, because he mainly only ran go routes, like I said, when lining up at the X receiver position. But he does have that top end speed where if he can get a step, he can run by you. It's not, he doesn't always get a step, because sometimes, I mean, it's very basic to run just straight, but if he can go by you. But he has a massive catch radius, and that's one thing that sticks out for sure. He makes some of the passes thrown his way look really routine that aren't maybe the easiest passes. I'm talking one-handed grabs just here and there. Just, okay, I'm going to go pluck that thing out of the air. So that's the first thing that sticks out. As I said, 50-50 balls. He's incredible. He really is. He's, statistically speaking, and I don't know if this is for 2020 or from this past year, but 67% of the contested passes thrown his way he caught. 67%. That's tied for 10th in college football. All right, fantastic in 50-50 ball situations. Now, he has himself in a lot of 50-50 ball situations. Similar to Drake London, when we said on the outside, he doesn't get a ton of separation at the top of his routes. The difference here is I don't think he gets a ton of separation maybe underneath of his routes on the outside. He does have that ability to take the top off. So if you let him get on top and get a step, he can go by you, and he will go by you, and he'll finish the play with a touchdown. 50-50 balls, he'll get a lot of them. He's really good at coming down with them, and he makes some really tough grabs where at a point I was watching film and I'm just like, dude, you just expect him to catch it. Like, you throw it up, you just kind of expect that, yeah, he caught that. I don't need to see it again. He caught it. It's like that. Really good in that way. So, like I said, I think he's a quarterback's best friend when it comes to throwing a jump ball. They will like throwing it to him because he doesn't have the biggest vertical, but he times it up extremely well. He tracks the ball at such a high level. He gets positioning well. He's great with back shoulder passes. He gets his eyes on the quarterback. He makes himself a threat. He tells the quarterback when he's open. And then at the same time, he's great in contested situations, good at the 50-50 ball, and he times his jumps up really well. So there's a lot like that ties together. He's got pretty reliable hands. I would say you can call him a reliable pass catcher. His drop rate is pretty darn low. It's like 8%. It's pretty low. So he's got pretty reliable hands. Now, some of that's a little bit inflated because he will catch a pretty good amount of passes behind the line of scrimmage. So that can inflate it a little bit. I would say pretty reliable hands. And there's some of those catches that he makes look too easy for what they really are. There are a couple things I don't love about his pass catching. And it's really one area specifically that sticks out to me. And that's those underneath routes, specifically when lined up as an outside receiver. But it's those underneath routes when he's playing tight man coverage. He doesn't get a ton of space always off the release. But really what sticks out here is that he lets balls come to him. That's one thing, is that you throw a 50-50 ball, you throw a broken down play, you throw it just anywhere near him, he'll usually go and attack the football. But on time, on schedule, slants, in routes, underneath routes, something like that with some man coverage, he can let the ball get to his body, and that'll lead to either number one, drops, or number two, pass breakups. So that's one thing I don't love, is that with how good of hands that he has, he does have a tendency to let balls come to his body on some of those short underneath routes instead of attacking it like he attacks a lot of other passes. Let those passes come to his body, and that will lead to drops. They'll slip through his hands. Defenders will be able to get in and make a play on the football. That always can lead to balls getting tipped up in the air and picked off. So that's the one area of pass catching that I don't necessarily love, and I think a lot of that drop rate comes from that area. Another one that's huge to me is run after the catch. This is a huge category this offseason, you know, with the offense that we have. I think a lot of things are going to be done after the catch. We saw St. Brown make a living off of that. You got to be able to make things happen, though, once the ball's in your hands. We got Josh Reynolds involved. Cephas was making things happen. You have to be able to catch the ball and get yards after the catch. We design a lot of routes like that. And for him, there's some to like here, specifically when you look at the numbers, all right? Per reception, he averages 7.6 yards after the catch, which you're thinking to yourself, dang, that's really good. And it is. Like, statistically, against other college receivers, it's really good. But again, you don't always see that. So what do I like? Well, after the ball is in his hands, he has good long speed. He does, especially when he's in space. If he's got time to build up at all and get any of the acceleration, he's not getting touched, he can put on the jets. And he's a strider that can get some separation in a hurry. He can take some routes where if you give him about 3 to 5 yards without touching him and he's able to get the full speed, he can be gone. He can be. All right. I don't think he has like Calvin speed or maybe even DK speed. I saw someone say he's going to run a 4.2. I don't believe that. I really don't. Maybe around a little bit lower than maybe a little bit of a sub 4.5, right? Because I think he does have that strider speed. But he definitely has some top end speed there. And he's a very physical receiver. He's well built. So he can be a handful to bring down. He can be, especially like I said, when he gets a little bit of that build up, he can be a handful to bring down with some of that long speed plus his size. And he's got a nice little stiff arm that he'll throw in and mix in a little bit. There was one against Bama where when he mixed that in, again, because of his build, he can be a handful to bring down, especially for one guy. Usually he's too big for the guy trying to bring him down in the secondary, you know, if that makes sense. So there is that to like on paper, but there's also things that I don't like with him after the catch. And it mainly comes from, there's just some times where he just looks like he's lacking effort. He seems to give up on plays too easily once the ball is in his hands. You know, one thing that I liked about Drake London, I felt like anytime he got behind the line of scrimmage, because he did it so much, and he doesn't do it as much, I feel like, as Drake London did. But anytime you got the ball in the guy's hands, he was trying to make someone miss, trying to run somebody over. He was like that. He was trying to pick up extra yards. He played like he was way smaller than he was. For this guy, he's got the ability. He just sometimes gives up on plays too easily, kind of walks him out of bounds. And that's one thing that sticks out, where I think sometimes he leaves yards out there. And yeah, it may not be huge gain, but it's 2 to 3 potential yards. And instead, he walks out of bounds and gets back to the line of scrimmage, you know, instead of going to get those 1 to 2, maybe even 3 extra yards. He's also not as elusive as a Drake London. I know that sounds crazy because London wasn't extremely elusive either. I don't think he's super elusive. You know, he's not super shifty. He's not that kind of receiver. You see it off of the release too. Extremely extremely shifty receiver. So once the ball is in his hands, he's not usually juking guys out. It's a lot of times just a big frame, tough to bring down, and he has some of that long speed that can become a problem for defenders. So that's an area that I would point to. So right after the catch, I think it's good. I wouldn't say it's great, though. You know, I'd put it in that good category. And finally, I have to bring up blocking. Blocking is important. If you don't block, you won't play in this offense. I think it's as simple as that. I mean, you have to be crazy good to not block and fit in this offense, because we're going to ask you to block. We're going to run screens. We're going to pull you as a receiver and have you lead the way like we saw with St. Brown, Khalif. All of our receivers that played this year consistently blocked, no matter their size. Khalif, Reynolds, St. Brown, they blocked. Go watch the film. They blocked. For him, he has all the physical tools that you would need from a guy that can block. And there's some times where I'm like, yeah, I love that. I like the way he's blocking. And they will utilize him sometimes like we utilize our guys. They'll pull a receiver, they'll have a motion pre-snap, and he'll become a lead blocker for someone out of the backfield. Or somebody. He'll become the lead blocker, and he'll be tasked with picking up a defensive back or a linebacker. And flashes you see, you don't see it consistently. There is sometimes, again, a lack of effort there, it seems, where he's kind of just walking around. You know, he's not always super engaged as a blocker. And I want to say, well, that's got to change. That will change next level. It has to change the next level. And I don't love that he put that on film as much as he did, because I feel like there's so much here physically where he could be much more consistent as a blocker. There's just lapses, there's inconsistencies, there's lack of effort there as a blocker. He can do it. We've seen it. He's been tasked with doing it. Heck, sometimes the responsibility is to be the lead guy, but he doesn't always block, and you have to block within this offense. So, and he's also had a couple of holding calls. So that's definitely an area that I would look at and say, okay, I like what it can be, but I wish I would have seen more consistency in this spot. That brings me down to my player comp. All right, and who is my player comp for him? Now, again, this, I know it sounds a little crazy, and maybe this because the playoffs are going on and we've had some fantastic games. My player comp, and I think you could throw a couple of different players in here by his play style, but I went with, I've seen some flashes of a Deebo Samuel, especially coming out of the draft from South Carolina. I think there's some Deebo Samuel within him. Of course, his build, he's strong. Like, he looks built, right? And Deebo Samuel kind of looks like a running back a little bit. He looks like a running back / receiver. First off, the build. Secondly, some of their knocks coming out of the draft, I think, are somewhat similar. You know, when you talk about a guy like this, when you're talking about route tree, playing the X receiver, coming off the release, and maybe needing some work there against some man coverage, I think, and surrounding some routes, I think there were some similar knocks coming out of the draft coming for Deebo Samuel as well, where there was talks of, well, it's going to be important to scheme that you put him in, you give him some motions, put him in some bunch situations. I think there's similarities there. There's some similarities within their play style. They also both can be pretty dominant. I mean, when you talk about physically, they can be pretty dominant. I wish I would have seen more, I guess the word would be feistiness from him. Like, I want to hit you, like that kind of thing. Because he's physically gifted to do that. And I know he can do it. I just wish I would have seen that mentality a little more. I feel like we saw that mentality much more out of St. Brown coming out of the draft. You felt that with St. Brown. I don't know if I'm feeling that all the way with Burks. You know, I just don't see it consistently enough. So, well, I say he flashes similarly to a Deebo Samuel, the style, the ability. I don't know if I see that dog in him when it comes to running and blocking and yards after the catch and that kind of area. But he's very talented, and it's within him. Like, if he wants to block, he can block. If he wants to run over somebody after the ball's in his hands, he can do it. I just need more consistency here. Also, if you're thinking about the numbers, okay, well, hold up. Treylon Burks doesn't run as much as Deebo does now, and he doesn't. Deebo runs much more in the NFL than he did back at South Carolina. I mean, think of this. If you put the stats right next to each other, Deebo had 8 rushing attempts in his final year at South Carolina for 26 yards. This past year, Treylon Burks had 14 rushing attempts for 112 yards and a touchdown. I see some Deebo flashes just in his play style, his build, some of that long speed. I see some flashes within his game. Deebo's probably more elusive, maybe better of a runner, but I think there's just some things that I think he just leaves out there. I think Burks just leaves too many yards out there sometimes. He's extremely versatile, and he's one of the guys with similar question marks about how effective will he be playing the X receiver position. And I think you got to get creative. But I don't think there's anything wrong with having a guy that makes plays behind the line of scrimmage, make plays with the ball in his hands. You know, I don't think there's anything wrong with versatile players. You can't have too many versatile players, but there still are some questions with him in terms of his role and playing in X receiver, because I think he has the build and ability for it in terms of speed and size, but there would need to be work on his route running, release, things like that. I actually think he could fit in this offense. Definitely think he could fit as a Z receiver. If you're going to be Z in this offense, you got to make things happen after the ball's in your hands. Think he can do that. Think he has the size for Z. Goff likes guys with some height, 6'3". Makes himself a great target. I think that fits well. And he's got enough speed to do it as well. And he's a good 50-50 ball player. Again, should I say flashes a little bit of Tyrell? Again, I like Drake London a little bit better. I do. But Treylon Burks, I think, could play the Z. You could put him at the slot position, like we saw both these guys. And I think there's X potential. It just hasn't been shown yet because he's been so limited on his route tree. But yeah, the guy can definitely make things happen. And really, for just running go routes at the X position, that says something about you, that you can find success just doing that. Put him out of the X and then just run. We're just going to run vertical with him. And the fact that he can find consistency there is pretty darn impressive. They just get him one-on-one without a safety. That's where the ball is going. It's usually as simple as that. I think he'll probably be a round 1/round 2. More likely, I think round 2 pick in this year's draft based on his production. Because he's at Arkansas, he maybe could have more production elsewhere. But I also think he left some things on the film that was like, man, you always want to see more. But I think he did leave some things on the film. But at the same time, I also think there's a lot that he can do. There's a lot that he can do. There's a lot that he can get out of him. So Treylon Burks, for me, needs some work in some areas, but that is another receiver candidate. Where do we put him on a grading scale? I guess, yeah, we got to put him on a grading scale. I'm going to put him at, as a whole, I think I'm going to put him in, I'm not going to LSD certify. I'm going to put him, I think, low grade, high good. Let's go like an 8.2. You know, I do like this receiver a lot. I'm going to go, no, you know what? Bump that up. Let's bump that up. I'm going to go 8.2.5 for now. We'll see if I change it post-edit. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, man. Thank you, Prop, for watching, and I'm out.